L'chaim, l'chaim, everybody. We should, B'etz Hashem, fulfill the Rebbe's objective, the Rebbe's charge in a very practical way, l'chaim. So I will leave it to the organizers to be able to put it on properly. But today's a very important day, Chav Ches Nissan. I remember distinctly, I was at the Farbrengen by hookup at that time. That's the way we were. And it was really a stunning experience on every level. We were paralyzed by the language of the Rebbe. All of us that were standing there internationally listening to the Rebbe at that time. This day, Chav Chasivim took on its very famous presence, notoriety, so to speak, or public image by this particular Farbrengen. When someone mentions Chav Ches Nissan, they relate to this Farbrengen. And actually, to tell you, the emotion that we felt at that time was emotion of paralysis, literally. We're stunned and paralyzed, primarily by a language that the Rebbe used that we never heard before, that stunned us, literally. The Rebbe said, I did, alt was ken, and alt is given, and the Rebbe used the words lehevel v'larik, to not and to emptiness, hevel v'larik. Can you imagine that the Rebbe and all of the work that he did and continues to do for all the years of transforming the entire world, transforming ourselves, our families, our reality? There's nobody that's on this particular Farbrengen that can honestly say that the Rebbe did not impact his life in some practical way. I know it for myself, and I presume that that's the case with everyone. If you didn't interact with him on an individual basis, no question that it came from some place that interacted with you as a shliach, eis shliach, etc. But everybody's been impacted by the Rebbe. The Rebbe, no question, is the Nasi Hadeir, the preeminent Nasi on every single level, impacting the world on every single level, without any question. The Jewish world, the Hasidic world, the Chabad world, and the secular world, in every way. And the Rebbe, that everybody looks forward to and looks up to give us direction in life, and that every word of his is real and eternal, like Hashem speaking through the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Hashem speaking through the Rebbe. And when the Rebbe spoke, you actually sensed that there was a divinity that was emanating from the Rebbe. And he says these words, that everything that I've done, and I've done everything that I could, was Lahevel V'Larik. That, as you can imagine, there was no way in which we could be able to assimilate any aspect of those words into a rational thought process. We were stunned. Like the world is paralyzed today, we were more paralyzed at that time. To the extent that immediately after the Farbrengen, there were meetings of shluchim and elderly chassidim to know how to react to this comment of the Rebbe. And what did the Rebbe really mean at this point? And why were we so stunned on this statement? When the Rebbe said, I did whatever I could, and he said it twice during the Farbrengen. He said it at that point, and then he said it later on. At the end of the particular sikha, he said, there should be one person or two people, or three people. Initially he said 10 people. And then he said one to summarize the ideas and how to bring Mashiach, how to bring him into a practicality. And that notion became a lot more real to me in a sense. Recently, I'm sure some of you have seen it, but there was a video of a lady that came in front of the Rebbe, and she was literally crying. And she was almost yelling and crying at the same time and said to the Rebbe, Rebbe, You have to bring Mashiach. We need you to bring Mashiach. Don't leave. We can't do it. We need you. And the Rebbe said, I'm leaving it to you in order to do it. I told you already my position, that it's up to you and to you and to you. And he pointed to her and to two people on the side. He said, but Rebbe, you're our Rebbe. You're our father. We need you to bring Mashiach. How can we not have it with, you can't do it without you. And the Rebbe said, if I'm your Rebbe, I'm telling you that I said, and the Rebbe raised his voice to a certain extent. Almost it seemed not a sense of frustration, but a sense of emphasis. He said, I'm leaving it to you and to you and to you. What does that mean? We were stunned. What does it mean that the Rebbe is telling us that he did whatever he could? Now he's leaving it to us. Who are we to bring Mashiach? What does that mean? The Rebbe didn't give us words just to inspire us in such a way. He gave us words that were real. The Rebbe wasn't giving us theatrics. I did what I could, now I'm leaving it to you. Shocking us. The Rebbe was not about a shock element. The Rebbe, everything he said was real. There was nothing arbitrary. Everything the Rebbe said came from the essence of his heart and his soul in a different way than anybody that we've ever interacted with. The Rebbe felt everything. The Rebbe was everything in every single way. So what does it mean when he says those words to us? And what is it, even though to us it was a paradigm shift, it was a reset button, so to speak, to us, something that we've never heard before. The Rebbe never said words like that before. So it was a shocking statement. But what was really the Rebbe saying to us practically now, 29 years later? We're able to see that video over and over and over again, as you and I have all seen it over and over again. In the last 48 hours, I've seen that video maybe 6 or 7 times, and I'm sure you have as well. And over the years, I've seen it at least 30 or 40 times, and you have as well. And you've read the Sikha, and you've analyzed the language, and you've looked at each and every word as it's been articulated already in Rabbi Levin's discussion, Rabbi Wolf's discussions. And there are esoteric concepts about it, and all kinds of transcendent levels that deal with Kabbalistic notions of Tohu and Tikkun and all these factors. All of that is integrated because every word of the Rebbe's Akteri Shebiksav, it has expansiveness that can address itself on every level. But the Rebbe spoke to each and every one of us practically. He spoke to us on a really lowest level, dealing with every single person in the audience, men, women, and children. And he said to this lady that was crying to me, he said, Rebbe, you're my father. And he said to her, it's up to you. He wasn't talking to the elders of Hasidim or the elders of Mashpiyim or the sophisticated ones among the shluchim. He was speaking to a simple lady with a kerchief over her head, was crying to the Rebbe. He says, I can't do it. I need you. And the Rebbe said, it's up to you. What does that mean? Up to you. We're not talking about esoteric concepts here. We're talking about practicality. The Rebbe meant practicality. There's a story that's told about Chassidim that were sitting together. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, before he was a Rebbe, was on the side. And the Chassidim were talking about what will happen when Mashiach comes. And one of the Chassidim, I don't recall his name presently, but he had a lot of pain in his feet that could not be healed, and it was very painful for him. He always had pain to walk and pain to sit. His legs were extremely painful to him, as unfortunately sometimes it happens. At that time, when the medical attention to these things may not have been so sophisticated and so advanced. And so one of his friends said, Mashiach will come, your legs will feel better. So Mashiach comes. I want to be able to understand godliness. I want esoteric concepts. I want to be able to feel the most essential levels of this feelings of holiness and spirituality. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting at the side, and they turned around to him, the Frierdiker Rebbe, they looked at him, they says, so what will be? And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, when Mashiach comes, he'll make your legs feel better. Mashiach is practical, and the Rebbe said, it's up to you and me. What the Rebbe said was nothing new. His language shocked us because it was time that he stunned us in a certain way. He's been talking to us about it the entire time. He said to us, my children, I need you to participate in it. Moshe Rabbeinu was the first Rebbe that we had, Nos Nesidareinu, of the time of Kabbalah Satayra. The Rebbe is the representation of that process. Moshe Rabbeinu was the seventh generation of Deir Shvi, as the Rebbe explained in his state of Chabad, in the state of the world address when he accepted to be the Rebbe formally. The same as Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe is in the seventh generation. And Moshe Rabbeinu, Hu Gael Rishon, Hu Gael Achron, he was the first Redeemer, he was the last Redeemer. So you think Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't say, I'm Mashiach, and I'm here, and I'm going to make it happen. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I am among Sheish Melas Elef Ragli Asher Nech B'Techem. There are 600,000 people that are around me. The Eibishter doesn't send Mashiach to me, Moshe Rabbeinu says. The Eibishter sends Mashiach to the world, to you, to every single Yid that is part of this process. Otherwise, he wouldn't need the whole community of Jews. The Rebbe said, I did what I could, which means that the representation of Mashiach that we know, as many of you know, there was a gentleman who was a big philanthropist and a lover of the Rebbe who lived in our community. His name is Shmuel Rohr, of blessed memory, an extraordinary human being. He lived in our community and I knew him very intimately and very well, and we spent a lot of time together. So he comes to me one day and he tells me that a friend of his, a business associate and a dear friend of his, said to him, Sammy, how is it possible that you should daven in that Chabad synagogue? Do you know that they believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach? And this was after Gimel Tammuz. How could it be? They believe the Rebbe is Mashiach. It's impossible the Rebbe is Mashiach. How could they believe it? Not logical. And you daven in that shul? So Sammy came to me and he said, what should I answer him? I said, why don't you bring me to a meeting? So he brought him to a meeting. So I said to him, do you know who Mashiach is? He said, nobody knows who Mashiach is. I said, the Rambam tells us what are the qualifications of Mashiach. So he opened up a Rambam in the Laws of Kings, Hilchos Malachim, and we looked at what are the Rambam's identification points for Mashiach. What is his description of what Mashiach should be? And we read it through carefully. And he came down, I said to him that according to what the Rambam writes, Mashiach, the personality of Mashiach that is described in the Rambam as one who could be Mashiach, is represented by the Rebbe. The Rebbe is has all that personality. Is it true? He says it's true, but so I said, let's not talk about who's Mashiach. You don't know who's Mashiach. I don't know who's Mashiach. But let me ask you a question. We live in a generation of a person who's eligible to be Mashiach. That's the person we live with, the person that has all the qualifications of Mashiach. So it means that for himself, he is a representation of Mashiach. He could be Mashiach, so he has the level of Mashiach. He reached that level. He knows Mashiach. He feels Mashiach. As the very famous story of the Rebbe that stuck his face out the window to smell if Mashiach was there or not. He said, why do you stick your face out the window? Because in his house he felt Mashiach. And the Rebbe said many times, Mashiach can come to an individual before he comes to the community. So is there a question that the Rebbe himself did not feel the reality of Mashiach? The reason the Rebbe was pained and the reason the Rebbe cried and the reason the Rebbe was passionate was because he wanted Mashiach for you and me, for us. That we should feel Mashiach, that we should want Mashiach, that we should have that same drive, Ad Mosai, in a real way, like the Rebbe said, if there were people that would ask Ad Mosai with the reality, not only do we not achieve Mashiach in the practical sense, but we didn't need Mashiach in our personal sense, in our service to Hashem. What does that mean? In our own lives. Nine years before that, in Tafshim and Beis, the Rebbe spoke a Sikha about the concept of Shabbos and Chodesh together. Shabbos Pashas, there was that same Shabbos as the Mitzvah. Shabbos and Chodesh, the same kind of calendric movement is, I think it's published in the Dvar Malchus, Tafshim Mem Beis. I remember that Sikha very carefully as well. And the Rebbe spoke about the fact that there's two aspects. There's an aspect of going in the orderly fashion, the union of Shabbos, that's represented by the sun, that's Leish Beisu, that the sun operates in an orderly fashion. Then there's the concept of Shchedish, a renewal, a regeneration, a newness, an over-the-top concept. And the Rebbe connected it with the Rebbe Marash, over-the-top base ear. And parenthetically, we mentioned before, the concept of Chav Zayin, the 3x3. So the Rebbe said in that Farbrengen that Chav Zayin is 3 times 3 times 3. Same thing that Rabbi Wolf addressed. The power of 3, Chav Zayin is 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And the Rebbe said another time, Chav Zayin is Zach, the purity, that comes to Kayach, the Kayach of Nissan, a double miracle. And in fact, in that year was new, the Flois, Arenu, that the Neflois, which is higher than Nissan, the Nebush is going to show us, it's Kayach. And there we go to Erev Shchedish, which is Yom Kippur, a higher level. So there we go to the Shchedish itself, which is a concept of renewal. And then from that, we go to the second day of the Shchedish, which is in the higher level of the Shchedish. But that really starts the Shchedish. And there we go to Beis Ir, L'chatchila Rebbe. The Rebbe says in a practical way that we are dealing with Mashiach for you and I and how to get it achieved. It's something that he spoke about all the time. And he said that the Aveda, we don't even have the Aveda. So let's talk about it in a practical sense. So in that Sikha of Tashim and Beis, the Rebbe spoke about the fact of renewal. And he said, each day we have that concept of renewal. A person wakes up in the morning, and as you know, the question that the Rebbe asked a number of times, why is it that a person has to sleep at night? Why can't we be up 24/7 and have much more productivity and work and be able to achieve, et cetera, et cetera? But we have to go to sleep and wake up in the morning because every morning is a renewal, something new that happens, a new day, like people say in their own lives. Today I'm going to eat. Today I'll sin a little bit. Tomorrow I'm going to become better. Today I'm going to not. Tomorrow I'm going to go on a diet. Tomorrow I'm going to start exercising. Tomorrow I'm going to start learning. Tomorrow I'm going to start chitas. Tomorrow I'm going to start davening properly. Tomorrow? Why tomorrow? Why not right now, today? Because tomorrow is a new day. The Rebbe said that a person wakes up in the morning in a practical way, and he says, he opens your eyes. Thank you, God, for giving me back my life, because you're in a state of death, so to speak. 1/60th of death is sleeping, and you wake up in the morning and you're still in a state of impurity because you can't even mention Hashem's name. And you say, thank you, God. Who do you thank? Melech Chai, the living and sustaining king. You're talking to the king. And the Rebbe says in the Tzikha that a person should think about himself and the reality that the king of all kings, Hashem in his essence, that's not only next to us, but within us, that Hashem, that the Eibishter blew into our nostrils the breath of life. That he blew into our nostrils the breath of life. And as it says in Tanya, not only blew into our nostrils the Inyan from Hevel, which is Lev, he blew into our feelings, our emotions, our heart, but also B'nai B'chai Yisrael comes from the brain, which he also interacted, and he entered and permeated our brain, our mind, and our brains permeated with the essence of Hashem. Internally and externally, he's standing right there. I'm thanking you, not I'm thanking thou, I'm thanking some higher authority somewhere out there. I'm thanking you. Who is you? Talking to you, God. You're standing right next to me. So on a practical level, I'm asking all of us here standing together, and I ask myself that as well. How many of us, when we wake up in the morning, do we think that Hashem is standing right there? Because if we knew that Hashem was standing right there, and we took into our concept, like it says in Tanya today, just like a physical king, you knew that the king is standing in front of you, you respect, what would you do? How would you wash your hands that morning? How would you jump out of bed? How would you daven that day? What would be your experience? It would be a whole different level. That's what the Rebbe said to us. It's up to you. I'm giving it to you. I want to see how you're changing. how you want Mashiach. As far as I personally am concerned, that's not my concern, my personal concern. I'm not a person. I am the Osiyadid. I am you. I care about you. I cry for you. I live for you. I took you out of every place. Like I just said in the Farbrengen we had with our community a few minutes ago, the Rebbe has done for us more than we can imagine for each and every one of us if we're honest with ourselves. And if we haven't done it directly, you did it to some of the cause it to happen to you. And we ask the question, we know what the Rebbe has done for us. We know what we want from him, but what have we done for him? The Rebbe said to us, I'm asking you a favor. I'm giving it to you. I did what I could. I gave you my power. I gave you my strength. I gave you my life. I gave you everything I have. I continue to give it to you. Please give me back a little bit. Do it. Just get it done. Before you think about the Eibishter, take it seriously. Take your Aveda seriously. Take your life seriously. Think about it. Meditate. And now we're in a condition when we're basically in a certain way quarantined, we're ourselves and isolated. We have a little bit more time. So in many instances, what happens? We have more time on a practical level, like the Rebbe speaks to us. What do you have? A little bit more time if Mashiach is here. You have more time. You can't daven with a minyan. A minyan gives us a little structure, order, like the concept of sun. So what happens when you don't have a minyan? You move it real quick. You daven it this time. You get it through with it. When you have more time, think about what you're saying. Meditate about the fact that the Eibishter is with you, that you and I individually are given the power from the Eibishter. The Rebbe says, I'm giving it to you, which means if you believe that the Rebbe says something, it's real, it's not arbitrary, it's not inspirational, not theatrical, it's not words. He said, you and me have the power to bring Mashiach. Can you imagine the responsibility? But let's take it upon ourselves in a serious way. And do it in a serious way, in a practical way. And mean it seriously. That's what the Rebbe wants from us. This is not magic. This is not something that all of a sudden we have to make changes that have not been expected of us. The Rebbe has expected that of us since he became the Rebbe in Tov Shin Yud Aleph. That's what he asked of us. Learn the Maimer, and you'll see. Avos Yisrael, learning Chassidus, Avedas Atfilah, being like we're supposed to be, Hafatza Miyanas Chutza, but taking it seriously, as if every single moment of our day, every single action that we do is going to have an impact on whether we will bring Mashiach earlier or God forbid later. When did the Rebbe say how many, they don't care if it's not going to come tonight, not come tomorrow, not come the day after. When the Rebbe said tonight, tomorrow, and day after, the Rebbe really felt tonight, tomorrow, day after. He didn't just say words, tonight, tomorrow, day after. He meant it. How many of us mean it? It's just words to us tonight, tomorrow, the day after. After this Farbrengen, after Chav Chas Nisan, how is it going to be? How are we going to be different? What's going to happen to us tonight? Are we going to take it more seriously? Is Mashiach going to become more a personal matter that we have to contemplate and think and do what's necessary to prepare us and the world for Mashiach? I've said it many times in the last few days, but there were 3 times in history that the world stopped. The first time was by the Noach's Mabul. The whole world stopped because the whole world was going to be destroyed. Only the table remained. A continuity of the Eibishter's creation. And at that time, why was the world completely obliterated? Because the evil of the world could not be elevated. That world was so corrupted, was so destructive, was so demeaning that it couldn't be elevated. And so it had to be destroyed. That was one time the whole world stopped. Second time the whole world stopped, after the world was this, all the negative was removed, that which could not be elevated was Matan Torah. The whole world stopped. At that time, the Eibishter gave his direction on how to elevate the world. There was an integration of the higher levels and the lower levels. Spirituality integrated and permeated physicality. Like the Rebbe writes in his Akdama to the Tanya in English, that we are the bridge between heaven and earth, the neshama and the body, an integration that we are able to make the physical world a holy world, to make physicality holy, even though our ancestors also kept the Torah, but the objects with which they kept the Torah did not retain any holiness. They were only temporary mechanisms by which they were able to bring the conduits of holiness into their space. But we are able to transform the physical world, the leather of the cow, that we can make boxing gloves and shoes with it. We can make tefillin and a sefer Torah with it. We can fix the world. That happened at Matan Torah right away, either before or after the difference of opinions. That the Eibishter says, I want you to create a physical space wherein I can manifest myself. And that manifestation happens on each and every one of our lives. Each one of us has the capacity to be able to do that. And that's what the Rebbe said to us in this time. And today, in our time, it's the third time in history the whole world stops. Didn't stop during world wars, didn't stop during Churban Bayis, tradition during Churban Bayis Sheni, were place in the world where everybody was living in their normal fashions. Even the Holocaust period, there were places in the world. All of a sudden, the entire world's in a state of paralysis. There must be something to it. And so the Eibishter says to us, stop. There's a restart button. Rethink it. Take those words of Chachas Nissan seriously. You can do it. You can make a difference in your behavior. And as a result of our own internalized behavior, that we take the gullus out of ourselves, like the Rebbe said, at that Sikh and that Farbrengen, Tavshim and Beis, the reason that people feel that it's okay, I'm learning, I'm davening, if not for the pandemic, we wouldn't have this kind of a shock, is because we have not taken gullus out of ourselves. We're not only a Yiddish and gullus, but gullus is within us. Gullus Yidden, he called it. We have to stop becoming gullus Yidden. We have to realize that the Rebbe infused in us the power to be free. Like the Rebbe said in the language of the Maral, that after Matan Torah, there cannot be a Jew that's not free. And we can do it in our own lives, and to bring it into practicality. And the Rebbe that spoke to each and every one of us personally, to you and I, said, I'm asking you, I'm giving it to you. When he said, I'm giving to you as mashbin, I say, I give you this power, I give you the strength to do it. We can get it done. And so, as our motto is, Lechatchila Riber, over the top, but get it done in a practical way, and we'll merit the Mitzvah Hashem to see Malkeinu B'Reishenu, the Rebbe will come before us, and we'll see the Rebbe say, thank you, my Chassidim, thank you, my soldiers, thank you, my children, for fulfilling that directive that I gave you to the ability to do. And we brought the world to the level of Mola Oretz Deis Hashem Kamayim Le'am Chasim, with the Rebbe together in the Beis HaMikdash L'chaim.
L'chaim, L'chaim B'bracha. Shkoyach Rabbi Lipsker. Shkoyach for making it real. Recently, a story about Rabbi Gershom Mendel Gorelik Eingesund from Milan was making its way around the WhatsApp. Rabbi Gershom Mendel received extraordinary amount of letters from the Rebbe. And he asked Rebbe's advice about so many things. And at one point, the Rebbe said to him, how long will I need to carry you by the hand and lead you? Think in a way of Chabad. That's the words Rebbe used. Think in a way of Chabad, and you will be attuned to my will. Trachten even from Chabad, think in a way of Chabad, and you'll be attuned to my will. It's a challenge, perhaps, to think in a way of Chabad. And we have with us Rabbi Manis Friedman, who is legendary for helping thousands of people for decades and decades to think in a way of Chabad. When Avram Avinu took Yitzchak to the Akedah, the Torah says that after 3 days, they saw the mountain Merachik, or Yaris Amoka Merachik. They saw the mountain that God had told them to go to. They had been through tremendous tests, trying to get to that mountain. They couldn't get to the mountain of Hashem. When they finally, after 3 days, were traveling to the mountain, the Torah says they saw they saw it at a distance. And the Medrash explains, the closer they got to the mountain, the more distant it seemed. When they were at their literally inches away from the mountain seemed farther than ever before. The word marchik, I heard from a Nissan Mangel's eingezunt, the word marchik is gematria Mashiach. The same is also with Bias Mashiach. The closer we get, the more real it is, the more distant the Chas V'Shalom it seems. That's why it's necessary to learn Chassidus, to learn about Mashiach, and to talk to your mashpia, talk to friends, to get insight, to trachten from Chabad, to think in the way of Chabad, to help us realize the truth, that it's not the way it seems, that we're there, we're by the threshold of Geula, and yes, the closer we get, the Sat makes it us think that it's farther away, like it was by Avraham Avinu. He was inches away from the mountain. It seemed the mountain was farther than ever was. And now it may seem that way in some ways to many people. The emes is, but to have trachten even from Chabad, to think in a way of Chabad and think through the lens of Torah and learn Geula, learn Yonikol Mashiach. And this gives us the true conviction of the emes, to be there at the threshold of Geula.